Go ahead.
All right, pounding the gavel. Okay, announcement is made that adequate notice of this meeting has been given and that it is being conducted in accordance with NJSA 10:4-6 at sec of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act. Shall we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting is open to the general public. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to come before us at this time for anything not on our agenda? Hearing and seeing none. Nora, if you would call the roll, please.
Mr. Didich?
Here.
Ms. Hernandez? Here. Ms. Veely? Here. Chairman Dinsmore?
Here.
We also have with us our board planner, Ms. Favate, our board engineer, Mr. Canjiano, and our board attorney, Mr. Wenzel.
Now, I'm going to pass by the second Pledge of Allegiance on our agenda.
It's so nice they make you do it twice.
Yes,
Is it on there twice?
it's on there
Testing
twice.
You passed.
Making sure you're really loyal.
I actually read the agenda before, just regardless. On our agenda tonight is application number 21:527, 1719 Route 10 LLC, Block 200, Lot 1, minor site plan for courtyard improvements. Now, you can talk slowly. You can,
Well, I'll try to get as much done as I can without my engineer, which might be all of it, but we'll see. Good evening, everyone. Joseph O'Neill, Garofalo O'Neill Ruggiero, here on behalf of the applicant, 1719 Route 10 LLC. These are courtyard improvements to an existing courtyard at the Octagon building out on Route 10. You might be familiar with that building. There's now a Starbucks in the parking lot. That is the property that we're talking about. These are various improvements that are being put in by my client as amenities for tenants and potential tenants. And I know, because this is a minor site plan, I have requested a number of waivers from your checklist items. We can address those.
Sure, and there are a number of waivers, and I am not going to go through them line by line. Suffice it to say that this is a minor application and there are no building improvements proposed. The only improvements are in the courtyard area, which is previously disturbed, previously developed, and surrounded by a building. So many of the checklist items don't apply. We did ask for some testimony just to confirm that there are no protected covenants or deed restrictions. We asked for some information and testimony, which I'm sure will be offered on storm drainage as well as solid waste disposal. Otherwise, we recommended a number of waivers and also one correction just on the signatures for the final plans.
Thank you.
That's it.
We asked for those waivers.
you asked for those waivers. Is somebody willing to make a motion to that effect?
I'll make the motion to accept the waivers.
Do we hear a second?
Second, Veely.
All right, Nora, would you call the vote, please?
Didich?
Yes.
Hernandez? Yes. Veely?
Yes?
Chairman, or, okay, let me say you right. Yes.
Yep, I saw it.
I like having trouble hearing. They all accept.
Yes.
Thank you. Now I've lost my client. So, Mr. Billen?
Is he the owner of the,
He is the principal of 1719 Route 10 LLC. We're going to start with Mr. Billing.
Mr. Billen.
Drum roll, please.
We're going to start with you.
now just not that it is of any import at this point in time, because it's been many years, but once upon a time, I had a lease in a building owned by Mr. Billings
Yes, you did.
and his father and his brother.
One of our favorite tenants of all time.
We tried to be good.
Despite that quirk of historical note, I think we're okay. Mr. Billings, can you, I always appreciate Mr. Dinsmore and Mr. Transparency. Do you swear firm and tell the truth before this planning board tonight, sir?
I do.
Can you please state and spell your name for the record?
Andrew Billing, Andrew, B-I-L-L-I-N-G.
Okay.
Mr. Billing, you are the principal of 1719 Route 10, correct?
That's correct.
It's because you don't get your messages. Sorry.
Don't let Mr. O'Neill get you down. Most important thing is you're here. Go ahead, Mr. Billing.
So, Mr. Billing, we're proposing a number of landscape improvements on the property in the courtyard, correct?
Correct.
The board has an exhibit in front of them, plans showing the improvements. But right now, the courtyard is basically an unused concrete fountain and an unused walkway, right?
Correct.
The purpose for these improvements is to help you attract and retain tenants in the building.
That's correct. There's a big trend in offices towards adding a lot of amenities, exercise facilities, outdoor walking paths, things like that. And our courtyard was very overgrown and had a bear in it at one time, but we want to make it more friendly, more people friendly, more open, and more amenitized.
Thank you. I have no further questions for Mr. Billing.
Members of the board, any questions of professional staff? We have any questions?
I think I'll hold for the engineer, I believe.
Yeah, same. Thank you, Mr. Billing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry.
No, do it. Get it
Hello,
done.
Mr. INL.
Try it. I can move this back.
Don't worry about it.
As long as you take the
Most important thing is you're here.
microphone.
Get everything out, I do apologize, I'm sure my phone's off before I even do something else to be late.
I probably should do that.
Before it ends. So, I have
Use that
a couple of
mic. You
exhibits.
can use that mic right there. They're gonna swear you in. One on the table.
Feel shorter.
You're good right there, don't worry about it.
That's not, it was a fall forward.
Turn it so the long
See how
part
mine-
faces you.
Sorry. Sorry about that.
It's a test of dexterity.
Just push it in.
There we go. There we go. Thank you.
All
Can you
right,
hear me okay?
perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Do you swear affirm to tell the truth before this planning board tonight?
Yes,
Okay, can you please state and spell your name for the record?
my name is Mario Iannelli. I'm the manager of land development services with Dewberry.
Please spell your last name.
Iannelli. And I ran out so fast, I got my glasses.
Okay, and Mr. O'Neill, you want to put on Mr. Anelli's qualifications briefly?
Well, Mr. Iannelli has been a licensed engineer in New Jersey for many years. I'm not sure of the year he was licensed, but he has been testifying in front of this board for at least the last 10 years.
Yeah, I received my bachelor's degree in civil engineering in 1993. I have a master's degree in 2001. Been a licensed civil engineer since 1997. I have had the privilege of appearing in front of this board and also the Board of Adjustment. I think the last time I was here might have been about 10 years ago when I was with Shorter Palmer.
Licensing is current for the state of New Jersey?
Yes, it is. And
Mr. Iannelli is an engineer for this.
and I may have to run and get my spare glasses out of the car if I'm having trouble reading some of the reports, because it's... So, we obtained an approval for this project a while back to construct, and I want to mark a couple of exhibits if you don't mind.
Just take the
Take that
microphone
off.
with you, Mario?
That
No,
one.
not that one.
He can,
That one.
no, so you have to turn that one on. It's not even on. On the bottom, hold the button in till it goes on. The lights,
Is it on?
yep.
You
Okay.
got it.
So, the exhibit to your right, it's actually the rendered plan from the approval.
Call it A1, Mario,
We'll call it
please.
A1, and
Thank you. I knew Mr. O'Neill would agree with me.
It's titled the Landscape Plan, and it was dated, last revised, January 30th, 2019.
This is in connection with a Board of Adjustment approval.
That is correct, which I'll explain it in a minute, but I'll mark the other exhibit. This is actually just a rendered exhibit of what's in the plan currently. Mark it though as A2. It's sheet 106. So what I have in front of you is, like I said, on the left is the approved plan by the Board of Adjustment. To get you oriented, Route 10 is running along the top of the page. So basically, on Johnson Road along the left, the building is referred to as the Octagon. You can see the shape here that I'm highlighting in this exhibit. The courtyard was not rendered at that time. It was not part of the application. There was a proposed hotel, proposed restaurant, and at the time, we got this approved in 2 phases. There was a Starbucks originally approved, and then we come back and did an amended approval. So why it says existing cafe, proposed restaurant, proposed hotel, at the time, the Starbucks was originally approved, and we had to come back for an amended. So what this shows is what we originally was approved, which required us to reconfigure the parking, and we got a slight variance for the number of parking because we were able to show that the parking offset between the uses. The hotel peaks at night, obviously the office peaks during the day. So I'm assuming the testimony that Andy was providing before Andrew, Mr. Billing, was that he moved forward with it to refresh the existing courtyard. He basically reached out to our landscape architect trying to figure out how to make this more marketable. Obviously, everybody knows office space is very competitive. So we looked at trying to create a space outside, which is very in demand right now. And so we were proposing to create like a golf pitching putt, a green, I should say, an outdoor space for some congregation, highlighting again A2, and also a little bocce area, all made out of synthetic turf, which is all pervious. We also wanted to create, instead of if you look at the A1, there was just a paver walk that went straight through. You came out and you walked around the fountain that was referred to, and you walked out, and that was originally going to get tied into the sidewalks. He wanted to create a different effect. He wanted to create that same walk that was originally there, but he also wanted to create a walk around the perimeter to give more distance for people to actually go for a walk during lunch or something like that. And this was all thought about as creating a pedestrian connectivity when we got this originally approved. That's why you can walk from the office building to the restaurant, to the cafe, and to the hotel. But this was also to enhance the actual space of the office building to provide some outdoor activity. When it's nice out, people want to walk around, nearby the office, and also to create some seating areas with some seat walls and kind of a plaza effect. So it was really, the goal of this was to try to create a space that would be more amenable and more acceptable to their tenants to provide some activity that's currently not there.
Can you give us a flavor for some of the landscaping that's proposed?
Sure. Hold on a second. My glasses would be useful. So basically, we opened up the area to try to create more color, so we've proposed roughly 8 ornamental trees, 78 pieces of ground cover, almost 200 ground grass, like ornamental grasses, 161 perennials, 48 evergreen shrubs, and 66 deciduous shrubs. So it's got a lot of landscaping that we're putting in. We're trying to create more of an open area and an open field to it. So most of the landscaping that we selected is kind of low in nature. And so what results from all the improvements is really the only thing that's really worth mentioning beyond the attraction of what we're trying to create outside is a very small increase in impervious coverage. We're increasing the impervious coverage. 70% is permitted. It was approved at 64.2%. It goes up to 64.4%. You're adding roughly 1,600 square feet of impervious with the pavers because of the walk that goes around. Again, I'm referring to C-106A2. So what we're trying to do is, we tried to minimize that. So I'll get into some of the dialogue we've had with your engineer to try and resolve some of the issues. But in general, what we're doing is creating a much more manicured space, more usable space outdoors, and ultimately to try to create more of an attraction for tenants inside the building.
Now, there's a question about stormwater, how that's being handled.
Yeah, and yes.
Your staff had a conversation with Mr. Canjiano about that. I wonder if you could relay what that conversation was.
Absolutely. So, obviously, we all know the new stormwater regs have adopted in March of 2021. They were enacted, actually, then they were adopted a year before. So they want to encourage non-structural techniques of stormwater management. The reality is when he started working in this courtyard, there's really nothing coming out of the courtyard when it comes to drainage. So we tried to figure out how we can mirror that, because right now, most of the area is just infiltrating into the ground. So what we're thinking about we don't want to create like these pockets of, like these natural wetland or some of the other things that they're trying to do here. And also, it's only water quantity. Water quality is not a concern because we're not creating any vehicular pavement. We're only creating pedestrian pavement, which that 1,600, if it was vehicular, we would have water quality also to be concerned with. So one of the things we propose in the plan, and we can elaborate further with the engineer based on the discussion, is that we would take the existing collection system that we're putting in there, because there is none now, and we'd be willing to put perforated systems in, and surrounding those perforated systems with 6 inches, roughly 6 inches around the entire pipe, about that, to create and capture about 2 inches of the runoff coming off the pavement and allow it to infiltrate in. And we would like to create an overflow in the event that that does not handle, or there's a much higher storm, that would connect to the existing system in the front. So while, that does encourage the recharge of stormwater, it is clean stormwater because it's not vehicular. It stays away from more of the, the wetland buffering, that we try to put in parking lots that are more natural in its look. Here, we want to make sure it's more pedestrian friendly and more like it's more of a landscape, manicured is a better word, area, because we're trying to create that office park outdoor space feel. So if we can come up with an agreement on, if we flatten the pipes out, put some stone around it, and allow it to infiltrate into the ground as it is today, I really feel that the 1,600 square feet would be really de minimis when you think about how it's currently infiltrating. And I think that ultimately it meets the spirit of trying to reduce the quantity of runoff coming off the site.
So what we're proposing is, if the committee sees fit to approve this application this evening, you will prepare a drawing for Mr. Canjiano's review showing this detail
Yes,
to his satisfaction.
yes.
Do you feel that addresses his comment regarding stormwater?
I think that is the approach that I would be preferring in this situation to address this comment.
Now, I wonder if you can address how solid waste is going to be handled in connection with this application.
Well, we can put receptacles outside for pedestrians that are walking out there. We're not expecting dogs or people walking their dogs, so we don't need pet. But we will absolutely add a couple of trash receptacles outside so litter does not become a problem.
And recycling as well.
Absolutely. That goes without saying, but thank you.
I have no further questions for this witness.
Any members of the board have questions for this witness? Mr. Canjiano?
Yeah, I'll get back to the stormwater in a minute, and we did have a conversation, and what the applicant's describing, we are generally in agreement with. That's just number one. Just go back to when I visited the site, there's construction fencing, and I guess apparently there was some work going on. So what's the status of the prior approval, and is that, what's going on with the construction activities at this point?
The status of the original approval, like everything else through COVID, things have gotten tied up, but we've received all the approvals. We've had all the treatment works, all the necessary approvals for sign off for the three buildings have been obtained. It's just, they're hoping to start construction again in the spring. But, you know, with COVID, hotel, obviously, restaurant, obviously, these are two very strongly hit, you know, aspects of during COVID. But obviously, talking to the owner, they are looking to start in the spring, start the construction of either the restaurant or the hotel or both.
And in my comment letter, there also appeared to be maybe some conflicting, the restaurant wasn't shown on the plan, so I couldn't tell if there was any conflicting pipes or inlets or things. So not to be necessarily addressed tonight, but as part of the condition of approval, we'll have to look at that and just submit an additional plan that shows that there's no conflict so that it can be inspected by the township inspectors, and if there's no confusion on what's being built, what's part of which application, just for clarity.
Absolutely. We can absolutely do that.
And then going back to stormwater, yeah, this is a unique, just for the board, this is a unique project, and unfortunate. And since the board approvals from the zoning board constituting a major development, the new March 2021 stormwater management rules as interpreted by the state DEP. I had to ask for interpretation for a prior application, and I had this answer already when this one came in. They look at it as in the state, and under an MS4 permit of the municipality, we have to follow state rules. That it actually becomes pulled into the requirements of a major development. But as the engineer just said, it does work out just to be the nominal amount of impervious with no water quality issues. So yeah, we would review that. I don't see any issue with that in principle. But as still would need to provide a stormwater management write-up on that and an O&M.
Absolutely.
In addition to the plan, I know you had mentioned a plan. But
We will absolutely update the plan to reflect the restaurant, like you said. We will also provide you with a letter report of some sort that will document the calculations and how we sized it. And also, we will provide an O&M for these pipes that maybe have to be, you know, cleaned out or expected. We'll have clean outs, something like that.
Absolutely. That's all I have to offer on that.
So, Mr. O'Neill, I'm assuming you agree completely to allowing a condition that the appropriate engineering experts within the town would get to work with your engineer and come up with a plan that's satisfactory to everyone.
Completely.
Just wanted to get it on the record. Ms. Favate, do you have?
Just a couple, I just want to get a sense kind of management and operation of the space. So, will it be open? It sounded like from your testimony that it would be open for users of the restaurant or the hotel if they wanted to walk through the courtyard, nights and weekends, and just get a sense of security and whether there needs to be signage to kind of direct people to come in or not through that opening at the north.
It's mostly an amenity for the office, isn't it? It's kind of behind the restaurant.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the overall plan, again, I'm referring to, there's a whole pedestrian walk. Here's the restaurant, the parking's in here, you can walk around the back. That's really, back of the restaurant's really access to the actual office building itself. Office building has other entrance points, so you know it has entrance points on I just lost my note arrow. On the east and on the west, and there's also along the south. This area is primarily for the office, but just looking at my client, there's nothing going to preclude somebody from walking in there, but obviously, he's going to want it secure too. I mean, he's not going to want people hanging out there, so it's in his best interest, obviously, that this stays secure. So it'll be monitored, but we're trying to create a space that's open, like, so, you know, you go to these multi-use facilities, sometimes you see that there's some of a continuity between the pedestrians and be able to walk from one to another, and it's a big selling point, you know, for somebody. Actually, they can stay they can work here, they can stay in a hotel, they can walk to the restaurant, they can get a cup of coffee. It actually has some synergy to it, and we would like to keep that as all possible.
Yeah, I mean, I could just see if depending on how popular the restaurant is, if you're waiting for a table, you're meeting a friend for dinner, you could take a stroll around the courtyard, which think is probably fine, just, maybe think about some signage that makes it clear kind of what's over there, and just directional, really. It's kind of up to you, and it's something that we could address through compliance if,
We could put
If
some
you're
like
interested in
wayfinding
that.
signs,
Yeah.
like, to make sure people are not straying. Absolutely.
okay. That's all I had, Mr. Chair.
Members of the board have questions? No, Mr. Wenzel, do you have?
No, I have the condition as so adroitly addressed by you, Chairman, and so professionally approved by Mr. O'Neill. So I'm ready to go.
All right. Any members of the public that wish to speak on this testimony at this time or ask questions? Mr. O'Neill,
I have nothing further, and I'll rely on the testimony as presented.
Are there any members of the public that wish to speak in opposition to this case in this time? I hear and see none. Or in favor? I hear and see none. I assume that's your case.
That's my case.
All right. Is any need for any discussion, or do I want to hear, or do you have a motion? Somebody have a motion?
I think it's gonna be interesting over there. I live near there, it's not far from 1515 too. It's gonna be a revitalization of Route 10.
Very
I'll
different.
make the motion. I'll make a motion to accept application number 21:527, 1719, Route 10 LLC. Block 200, Lot 1, minor site plan for courtyard improvements. Did I get that with all the?
Subject
with-
to?
Subject to
Would
the,
you agree with me that as a condition of approval, the applicant will continue to work with the appropriate township officials and professionals with regard to stormwater management control plan?
absolutely. I
We're
agree
also
with
submitting
this-
that plan to Mr. Canjiano.
Right,
Exactly,
exactly.
exactly.
Good enough. Do I hear a second?
Before that, I thought there was one more Andrew had where we wanted some drawings of pipes, right?
Yeah,
I
that's.
think
the other
that's
part.
all,
That's
that's all part of
yeah.
this.
More
That's all part of
perforated
this, I believe, right?
6-inch pipes.
Yeah, the items in our letter.
Yes.
The engineers know what they're talking about.
Okay, just want to be sure, yeah.
We may be late, but we know.
But I second that each.
Nora, would you call the roll, please, or? call the
Mr.
vote?
Dedich.
Yes.
Ms. Hernandez.
Yes.
Ms. Veely.
Yes.
Chairman Dinsmore.
Yes. Got it right that time.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Joe. You get asked the boss lady.
Yep.
You can take them off the board and fold them. I'll take them.
Have a motion to adjourn the minor site plan subcommittee?
I'll make the motion to adjourn the minor site plan.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? I'm waiting for somebody to oppose that one.
Someday, I'm gonna. Aye.
Now,
Go ahead.
All right. Looks like he's just taking down everybody's names. Nick, you gotta turn around your plate. There you go.
okay.
Court reporter is the hardest working person in the room.
I am
Oh,
aware
yeah.
of that. Right. He's taking care of
No
that.
problem. Do you need any more time?
Yes.
Mr. Mansell, what is your
Member, he's a board member. Board member, board member.
Thank you.
Okay. And Nora, you're all set?
Sure am.
Okay. Announcement is made that adequate notice of this meeting has been given and is being conducted in accordance with the NJSA 10:4-sec of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act. Would everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. This meeting is open to the general public. With that said, are there any members of the public who would like to come forward with any topics not on the agenda for this evening? Seeing nobody come forward, I will close the public portion for this evening and move on to our agenda. Nora, would you please call the roll tonight?
Dedich.
Here.
Dinsmore.
Here.
Hernandez. Here. Mandel.
Here.
Napolitano.
Here.
Veely. Here. Von Aiken.
Here.
We also have our board planner, Ms. Favate, our board engineer, Mr. Canjiano, and our board attorney, Mr. Wenzel.
Okay. We have one application on our agenda tonight. That's application number 21:514. Is the applicant representation here?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank
Okay.
you for speaking into the mic.
No problem. My name's Corey Klein. I'm a member of the firm Sills, Cummis and Gross. I'm sorry, I'm not a member of the firm Sills. I'm an associate at the firm Sills, Cummis and Gross, but
You could hope.
here's hoping. We are the attorneys for Medem, a GE Power business, which is the applicant this evening. If I may proceed.
Keep going.
Yes,
thanks.
Till we throw something at you, you're good.
Okay. Thank you. So we've submitted an application for minor site plan approval and bulk variance approvals in connection with proposed temporary modifications to an existing manufacturing facility located at 700 Parsippany Road and identified as Lot 2 in Block 739 on the tax maps of the Township of Parsippany. The applicant is requesting that these temporary conditions remain for a period of up to 3 years. The conditions that our engineer will describe include the erection of a tent, office trailers, an electrical room, and the relocation of some equipment outside of the existing building. So the applicant intends to store tanks used in connection with its existing manufacturing operation, which involves drilling cooling holes in gas turbine engine components that are used at other General Electric power plants. These tanks are going to be stored, or they're currently stored, in the proposed temporary tent until the existing tank farm is demolished and the new tanks can be installed in its place. The other temporary structures, including the office trailers, an electrical room, and a chiller, are being relocated outside of the existing structure so that the applicant may continue its operations while performing upgrades to its interior to allow for safer, more efficient, and more productive use of the property. The applicant, as the board may recall, was before this board back in 2017, maybe 2018, and for an expansion of the building, the applicant is not currently prepared to commence with the proposed upgrades that were approved in 2018 because of the world's changed since COVID-19. Supply chain issues and various other events have created a situation where the applicant has not decided whether to go forward with those improvements at this time. And the idea would be that at the end of the 3 years of these, if the board would be willing to grant these temporary improvements, these temporary improvements would be relocated either inside the building or perhaps the proposed expansion will take place. But we are seeking this relief for a period of up to 3 years, unless and until the applicant decides on how it will proceed with those previously approved improvements to the structure. The applicant is seeking several variances, bulk variances from your code, and which our engineer will go into further detail about. And the applicant has provided the required notice to property owners and would ask that the board confirm that notice was adequate.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, just on the jurisdictional issue of notice, those, I assume, Mr. Klein, that those notices were sent to our board secretary with...
Yes, I received them.
With barely a minute to spare.
That's the truth.
Well, then,
1 minute of
with
thought.
that admission, I think there is no issue with jurisdiction.
Okay.
So we can proceed.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to call my first witness, Mike Marinelli of the firm Menlo Engineering.
Before we start with the witnesses, we would like to take care of the waivers that were granted by our planner.
Correct, they always kick it to me first for the
Yes,
waivers. Because this is an application on a previously disturbed, previously developed site, everything that's occurring is on paved areas. There is no landscaping, no utility work, no grading, et cetera, and no new building. Many of the checklist items don't apply. So we do recommend waivers for many of these. We did ask for some additional information on deed restrictions and covenants. I think information was actually provided tonight. Other items that we requested in testimony is just regarding the overall operation and treatment of solid waste. And then there's some other items from our memo, but in terms of checklist items, the majority of these we believe can be waived.
All right. And I should correct myself, these were not waivers that you, these are waivers that are being recommended.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Do we have a motion to grant the waivers as recommended by our planner?
Move the waivers as presented by BFG Planning in their memo of November 18, 2021.
All right, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second Hernandez.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the waivers are granted, and you're welcome to continue with your case.
Okay, you can have them sworn in.
Okay, do you swear affirm and tell the truth before this planning board tonight?
I do.
Okay, so please state and spell your name for the record.
Sure, it's Michael Marinelli, Marinelli, of Menlo Engineering, located at 261 Cleveland Avenue, Highland Park, New Jersey.
Okay.
Thank you.
Counsel, you want to put Mr. Marinelli's qualifications on briefly?
Yes, absolutely. Mr. Marinelli, if you could tell us qualifications.
Sure. I'm a Rutgers graduate from class of 1999. I've been practicing site planning since then, so for approximately 21 years. I'm a licensed professional in the state of New Jersey and have been so for the last 14 years. I've provided testimony in front of dozens, if not 100, boards similar to yourself, including this one back in 2017 as part of the original approval.
All right. Does the board have any questions for this witness in engineering? All right. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and I'll permit your testimony as a expert in engineering.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could direct your attention to the easel, I put up a black and white overall plan, which I should mark as an exhibit.
A1.
A1.
And Michael, if you're going to be up by the easel, there's a...
Take the mic.
No, right in front of you, Cory. Yeah, number 2. Just,
Okay.
wait 1 second, you got a button at the bottom, Nora?
At the bottom, there's a button, just hold it in till it turns on.
Okay.
We're good?
I believe you can hear me now. So the exhibit on the easel that I've marked as Exhibit A1 is entitled Overall Plan, Metum-Parsippany, dated March 31st, 2017, Revision 1, July 14, 2017. This is the original approval that was sought back in 2017. As I said, I was here in front of this board for this approval. I just wanted to give the board a brief history, just so you understand what was, if you weren't here at that time, you understand what the applicant is asking for this evening. You can see the shaded area on the southern side, or actually it's the eastern side, because for the purpose of this presentation, north is actually to the left. The subject site, designated as Block 739, Lot 2 in the tax map of the Township of Parsippany, commonly known as 700 Parsippany Road, which is also a county route 511. It's located on the westbound side of Parsippany Road, between V at the V at North Jefferson Road to the south, in Hanover Township, and Eastman Road to the north. So you can actually see Eastman Road directly here on the left side of the exhibit. The property has access off of Parsippany Road, nearest the Eastman Road or northern side of the site. The existing building is on the northern side of the site, with most of its parking on the far north, up against Lot 1 on the left side of the exhibit. The surrounding areas is all industrial here. There are several industrial and/or warehouse spaces that surround the site. Immediately to the west and south is a wetlands complex. If you've reviewed the site plans, you'll see that there's a lot of wetland in those particular areas. So going back to the history here, on the western side of the building, the applicant proposed to put an addition on. Now, in this existing location, there's a smaller, so this is a warehouse that has a clear height, it's a 35-foot building. But in the rear of the building, there's this recessed area that stores their tanks that they use, that stores the chemicals for their processes internally to the building, okay? Now, the application at the time was to demolish that recessed portion and extend it the full height of the building out to that location and provide new, updated, more safe apparatuses for their processes. Okay. So, as you know, the economy took a little bit of a downturn. We had the whole COVID issues, and the applicant wasn't able or hasn't been able to construct those new improvements at this time. And they're also taking this time to reflect on what they wanted to do and see if they want to make any modifications to that. So in the interim, what we're here tonight seeking approval for, excuse me, got away from me. So what we're here this evening for is, and this I don't believe needs to be marked as evidence because it is the submitted plan. It's the same one that everybody should have in front of them, but I figured I'd put it on the board so I can point to it and you'd understand what I was saying. So, on this exhibit on the western side, just off of the southwest corner of the existing structure, the applicant proposes to put up a 40 by 100 tent structure that will house some of these components. Now, as you heard a little bit earlier, there are existing components within the structure, both in this recessed roof area and immediately inside that existing outside wall of the warehouse portion of the building. Okay, so in order to construct that, a lot of that apparatus needs to be moved or relocated away from that area so they can reconstruct the new outer wall that was approved back in 2017. In order to do that, what the applicant is seeking approval for this evening is to erect this 40 by 100 foot tent in order to house that equipment in a temporary condition. And as you heard from the attorney, they're looking for an approval for a 3-year duration, under which time they can move that apparatus out and construct the proposed improvements as part of the 2017 approvals. Along with that, there's some operational equipment that needs to be housed. You'll note that there's a temporary electrical room as well as a chiller. All of these are temporary structures that will allow Medem to continue operations as they are today and maybe even improve on them slightly with newer technologies while the approved addition is constructed. We're also proposing 2 temporary office trailers that will be used for the construction and management of that outdoor facilities, as well as some relocation of additional tanks. 2 of them, or 3 of them, I'm sorry, are on the south side of the building, again, nearest that southwest corner. And then the frac tank would be on the northeast corner in a very similar position of from the previous approval. The effects that this has on the site plan, right? From a stormwater management, none. This would be constructed on top of an existing asphalt, where it would be constructed or it is constructed with the proper containment, right? As I said, these are tanks that will hold liquids and materials that are necessary for the process. They are double-walled tanks, right? So they're safe to begin with. And then there's a containment area within this, and the purpose of this tent is to contain any potential spills that could occur as part of regular operations. So it's a belt and suspenders type system that would include all the safety that's necessary for safe operation. Additionally, but because this is being constructed on existing asphalt, what's on that existing asphalt? And the answer is parking, right? In the existing condition, there are parking spaces in that area. 42 to be exact, and those would be disrupted for this period of 3 years while this tent structure would be in place. This, of course, reduces the overall number of parking spaces on site to 71, where 89 spaces is required. Now, the 71 spaces are located in this triangular area. They're all existing on the northern side of the existing structure. Now, the applicant has occupied this building for a long time now, and they know their operation, and they have adequate parking for their operation. So the elimination of those 42 parking spaces doesn't have a negative impact on their overall operations. They'll continue to operate as they do today, utilizing the 71 spaces on the north side. Now, as was stated, there are a couple of waivers in addition to the deficiency for parking that are required. First of which is the rear setback. 50 feet is required for structures on the rear yard. The applicant proposes that this structure be erected 28 feet off of the rear property line. This is for a couple of reasons. It's an existing paved area, as I say, so there's no additional disturbance to the site necessary if it were placed in this location. I don't think it has a negative impact on the surrounding areas because, as I stated in my opening, the western lot to the site is encumbered with wetlands and it's a wooded area, so there's nobody immediately adjacent and it's an undevelopable area where if it were to be a nuisance to somebody, it's really unaffected because of the condition of the adjacent site. One thing that was picked up by one of your professionals that we failed to submit as part of the application was the accessory structure height. 15 is permitted as an accessory structure height in your ordinance. The tent, however, would be 18 feet high. The reason for that is because it holds tanks and has the necessary piping to safely connect the pipes from the interior operation to the exterior. In order to accommodate those facilities and have the piping safely conveyed across to these pipes, that structure needs to be slightly elevated at 18 feet. Now, again, the structure that I'm talking about is in this back corner of the existing site. So from Parsippany Road, it's 350 feet. So even though it's slightly elevated above what is permitted in the zone, it's really not a visual nuisance. It's also being hidden by a 35-foot tall warehouse between it and people heading southbound on Parsippany Road. And then lastly, there is an existing nonconformity that was present as part of the original application that we'd like to maintain, and that is a 21.91 foot drive aisle where 25 foot is required. That's in the existing parking area. Again, it's an existing condition that was approved as part of the original application, but for house cleaning purposes, we'd like to continue that existing nonconformity. Does anybody have any questions related to the proposal this evening and or any of the waivers that I spoke about?
Susan, any questions for the engineer?
Well, you answered my first one, thank you, on the height of the accessory structure, so that would require another variance. Any lighting in the tent or any of the other structures?
There is internal lighting just for general safety and operations, but nothing excessive and nothing external to the structure.
Okay. And then, on the approval for 3 years, just want to be clear on when that time clock starts. Is it with the approval of this board or C of O? You just get that on the record in terms of when
The intention would be,
starts.
or unless you want to take it, I can.
Yeah, I think the intention would be that it would commence at the time of adoption of the resolution.
Okay. And then lastly, and in large part would defer to the board engineer on this, but in terms of hazardous materials, you spoke a little bit about the containment system. Are there any other approvals by outside agencies or anybody else who has jurisdiction on safety or operational aspects?
We did obtain approval from Morris County, Morris County Planning Board.
Okay.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but I don't think, because we're only, the structures are on existing pavement, we don't require approvals from any other outside agencies.
That's correct. So we're not disturbing any land, so soil erosion isn't required. Similar to the initial application, if you recall or you were here, there are permit by rules that you can obtain from the DEP regarding the adjacent wetlands and flood hazard area that you probably saw in the plans, but they're all permit by rule because they're in previously disturbed areas.
Okay. That's all I had, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Mr. Caggiano?
Yeah, could you just explain on the circulation, I mean, the circulations around the building, how is that being maintained? I couldn't quite see where, will you maintain circulation around the building for emergency vehicles?
The emergency vehicles will only be able to access the western side of the building. There isn't adequate space for emergency vehicles to continue along the southern side of the building from that location.
So you can still get to the back of the building from the northerly side?
That's correct, from the eastern and western side.
And then as far as SED, should you decide to move forward with construction, then you'll recertify your SED permit at that?
That is correct. We do have a valid permit currently for that, a recertificate, but, at the time of construction, should it be necessary to be recertified, we will do so.
And I was a little confused on the earlier testimony about deciding within 36 months. I thought you're asking for a 36-month tent time. Wouldn't that be inclusive of the time it takes to construct?
Yes, depending on the time that they decide to construct, but we're asking for this relief for 3 years. At which time, if it has not yet been constructed, we would come back to the board and either seek additional relief or return the site back to its original condition.
So to go back to that, you're not going to make a decision about constructing for 3 years, or you?
No, the intention is to make a decision in the short term. Now that the supply chains are opening up and it'll be easier to get materials and they can get new costs, and then they know how the post-pandemic business is working, they'll be able to make that determination hopefully in the near future. So the period of time should be inclusive of construction, but again, we can revisit it in 3 years.
Do any members of the board have questions for this witness? Mr. Chairman? Mr. Dinsmore first?
Yeah, so I just want to go back to making sure that there is a thorough containment of any hazardous material, whether it's an aerosol, a vapor, or leakage, obviously. You said you had double-walled containers and things like that, but the idea of hazardous material being contained by a tent, to me, requires a little bit more disclosure of how it would be, how the public and more importantly, just as importantly, the wetlands would be protected from this.
Yeah, so as I was saying, in addition to the double wall tanks, there's a containment system internally on the ground, on the base of these structures that would, should the double wall tank or a valve nearby fail, that it has a secondary
I'm assuming they're
function
all
with which to collect
signalized as well.
Absolutely. Sensor. As you know, there's heavy plumbing code related to all of this type of work that helps with, promoting safety for such apparatus.
Okay, and I'm assuming, air pollution considerations, are there any vapors that come from this material? Is it possible for the sun to shine on the tent, cause it to heat up, cause it to vaporize in some way that might be obnoxious or dangerous?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, there are representatives here from Meadows, should you want to hear more detail.
Maybe we could hold off Mr. Dinsmore, and we'll, after finishing the engineer, maybe the applicant wouldn't mind answering a couple of those questions.
That makes enormous sense to me.
Yes. Okay. And just
Get the engineer off the hook.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, like I said, I'm not familiar with any, but you can ask the
I
representative.
understand, but I'm just trying to, the idea of putting what might be considered hazardous material in a tent is still, something that I need to make sure is being
Understood,
done
Mr.
in
Dismal.
an acceptable way.
Well, that's an area of clarification I would like to ask for too, because it says on the site plans that the containment area, there's no materials currently being stored in the area. There's the chiller. Would there be materials stored in the tent, or are those material storage is going to be limited to the areas identified as 1, 2, and 3?
No, there will be materials as well, but I think it'd be better hear the details of that from operations.
Fair enough. I believe Mr. Mandel had a question?
Yes. How many employees are at Meadow?
Another good question that I'd like to defer to the operator.
Okay. Any other questions for the engineering witness?
I have one, Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Napolitano?
Do you have any, like, artist renditions of what this tent would look like? Any sort of computer-generated type things we could see? Like, I just want to get a better idea of what I'm looking at.
Sorry.
I know it just says 4,500 foot tent, but nothing?
I do not.
Okay.
Does it have sides?
Yeah, it is a dome, it is a U shape, so it's open it's open on the 40-foot side section, it's 100-foot long.
It's like a hangar.
And it's shaped, it looks very much like a hangar. It has a steel frame and it's draped in a plastic material.
The tent is existing.
Okay.
Yes,
I already gave it a permit back for temporary for 6 months,
yes.
so it's existing.
So if you've had the opportunity to go to the site, you would have
You would
seen
see
it.
Okay. Other question? Jen?
Can
Question?
I just ask
Ms.
one
Field?
question? I noticed during, when we did plan review, I'm in the zoning and construction department, and I just want to clarify, because now's the time to do it. There is confusion about where the addition is being proposed. On the previous plan and on this plan, you show the 2 circles of the temporary tank with secondary containment for collection of water. Does that have a roof over it? Because during plan review, we're confused as to whether there's a roof over that. On the plan, it kind of makes you think that the addition and the roof is not over those 2 tanks. Like, see on that plan, the shaded area is the addition,
Yep.
and it makes it seem like the tanks are not roofed. But on the plans, we stopped plan review because it seemed like there was going to be a roof on it. So if there is, we should add it now, so you don't have to come back again.
I can tell you in 2017, it wasn't proposed with a roof, but that may have changed, and again, maybe we defer to the operator.
What are the,
All right.
Yeah,
All right,
you
so
can
we'll have
answer that
another
question.
witness.
May I ask a clarification from Jen? to see
Go
if it's
ahead,
the same
Ms.
thing we're talking
Hernandez.
about? Is that are you talking about the frac tanks here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah,
We're
they
talking about the
were
frac tanks on the northwest corner
Yeah, so-
of the structure.
They were on the original plan, and on that plan, while we're doing plan review, one of the pages makes it resemble to be roofed, and on another page, it's not. So either way, like, I figured now is the time to clarify, and we could add it so that we don't have to send you back.
Understood.
to review.
Okay. Maybe the engineer can consult with the applicant to see what kind of clarity he could get on that one. Mr. Chair, if I can, I'm not sure I heard this, but with regard to the area where the temporary tent is, between that area, the temporary tent, or just around the whole area, is there allowance for vehicular traffic? I can't tell from this because I'm not an engineer. Can cars or trucks, are they allowed to drive in that area around the tent?
To pass it on the west, say, there's
Or-
roughly 10 feet between, from the edge of existing pavement to the edge of the proposed tent.
Okay, so what I'm getting to is there's little to no likelihood of anyone backing up into it or somehow some vehicle
No, it's,
traversing the area.
is set up to not intend for vehicular use, but it's technically wide enough that you could squeeze a car through if you needed to.
Okay. I couldn't tell from the plans because there's macadam and there's concrete area, and I couldn't tell if any of that was necessarily drivable area.
I think where you're getting at, Mr. Wenzel, is there protection of the tent in the event that someone did drive close to it in terms of bollards or anything like that?
Right.
That's where you were.
I don't know if you can identify that because in similar type of applications, normally that's probably one of the most likely scenarios for safety. I know that Mr. Dinsmore brought this up, but one of the most likely scenarios for safety is somebody not meaning to, instead of putting the car in drive, puts the car in reverse and hits into the tent. So is there some level of protection from vehicles
getting to that area where you have these tanks being stored in that temporary tent?
There is currently no protections, i.e. bollards, proposed in the area. Obviously, the applicant, as a condition of approval, would be willing to provide them. But I will note that the western side of the building, where there is an existing macadam driveway, there's really no reason to go back there any longer. The purpose of that macadam drive was to access the 42-car lot in the southwest corner of the site. As I stated, that lot is no longer going to exist or be needed for at least this duration of 3 years. So, where in a lot of cases you do have regular vehicular traffic coming near an accessory structure, in this particular case, there's no reason for a car to be back there, so there's less likely an opportunity for there to be an accident.
Would there be any reason for an emergency vehicle to access from that area?
Well, I'm sure, yes. I mean, there are accidents and things that can happen that may require an emergency vehicle to get back there, but again, that driveway is going to be maintained so that emergency vehicle could utilize it. What I was stating is there is going to be no regular vehicular traffic in the area.
Actually, that does present, from the fire chief's commentary, he wants to make sure that there's full access around the structure. And I'm assuming you're from an engineering point of view, you believe that there's full access around the structure for any fire vehicle that might be called upon.
Well, there's not currently full access around the entire structure, right? There is no drive along the eastern side of the site, and the driveway on the west goes to a small area on the southwest corner of the existing structure. But even in the existing condition, there's no full circulation of the existing structure.
In your opinion, though, as an engineer, is there adequate access for fire department to access the structures involved?
Yes.
Okay. From an engineering point of view, would it be reasonable to put up some sort of signage saying no parking in this general direction or something like that?
Yes. We would agree to that condition of the approval.
Okay, so at that little, I'll call it the entrance to that back.
Sure, on the northeast corner where you're really not going to have vehicles coming, we would be able to provide adequate signage.
Along that topic, I was wondering about adding a chain link fence in that area. Do you think that would be a better option, or is...
Well, Mr. Chair, I think what we could do, I know there's been a number of concerns by the board about potential safety hazards, unintended safety hazard from a vehicle traversing the area. Mr. Klein, would you agree that perhaps as a condition of approval, the applicant will work with the township employees and professionals to come up with some type of vehicular safety area, whether it's with bollards, wayfinding signs, or some other fencing? Do you work with the town on that? The applicant will do that?
Yes.
Yeah, that was great. But,
I am also a little concerned about the security of these materials in that area, and so I do see that you have chain link fence around portions of the area. Is that provide full containment of those materials, or are there ways around the fence?
There is fencing. I guess I should talk briefly about that. There is fencing that comes off of the southern side of the building on the western facade, and then it heads south along the tent area, so that it cuts off any access from the eastern and southern side of the structure. There is also a gate on the northeast corner that in the present day remains open all the time. So there is opportunity there to, as you said, now that there's not going to be car traffic going to that rear corner of the structure, that it would be able to be isolated and protected from a security standpoint as well.
Okay. I think Mr. Caggiano has a question.
Yeah, just to follow up on Mr. Wenzel's comment, there is a letter from the fire department that's requiring that the access for emergency vehicles around the building kept clear. So to Mr. Wenzel's point, that discussion should follow up and be clear that get confirmation from the fire department that they understand what's represented on that plan and understand what the proposed limits of circulation are. I suggest maybe like a turning template or a truck circulation plan presented to the fire department, so that they, fully understand what you're presenting.
And we could agree to meet with the fire official and obtain those appropriate approvals.
I'm assuming the fire officials were aware that this was both sulfuric acid and nitric acid being stored on the facility?
They were supplied with the same documentation as the board.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board or our professionals? All right, then I'll turn it back over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you. I think there were some questions that Mr. Marinelli wasn't able to answer. We do have representatives of the applicant here, specifically Mr. Mark Schnabel from General Electric is available to answer some of the operational questions that were just asked.
Okay. Okay, sir. Raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm and tell the truth before this planning board tonight?
I do.
Okay, just pull the mic a little closer to you. Okay, and then if you could please state and spell your name for the record.
Mark Schnabel, spelled M-A-R-K-S-C-H-N-A-B-E-L.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Schnabel. I believe the question from Mr. Dinsmore had to do with, one of the questions had to do with vapors and things like that coming from the structures that encase the liquid materials that are being stored.
Sure. So inside the tent structure, to be clear, the tanks are closed. It's a closed loop system. So it's not open to the air. There would be negligible, any type of evaporation that might occur there if someone were to open to clean out a tank, for instance.
Oh, I believe we need you to speak a little bit louder or closer to the mic.
Okay, can you hear me now?
That works
Yep.
well.
My apologies. Would you like me to repeat?
If you could, thank you.
Yeah, the tanks that are contained in the tent are closed top tanks, and it's a closed loop system. So it's not normally emitting any type of vapors. The materials that are in that, they're mild acid solutions. They don't readily evaporate or produce vapors in normal conditions. So
How are they filled?
they're filled through piping that's in the inside of the existing structure.
Well, does a truck come up and fill it with a gas thing, or what? How is it filled? Do you refill the tank? Is really where I'm.
Yeah, understood. So there's a couple of tanks, the bulk storage tanks, which are the ones that are not inside the structure, that are, I don't have the exhibit in front of me, but somebody asked about whether, like the frac tank, for instance, there's bulk storage tanks there. They're filled by a tanker truck. They come in, they connect with a hose, pump, and they fill up. From that point on, everything is in the piping, either in the building or between the building and the temporary structure, being pumped between the tanks.
So if I get you, you're saying the tanks in the building get filled by the tanker truck, and then there's piping that goes to these tanks separately, so that there's no actual tanker truck going to the tent?
Not quite, but close. Sorry, this is a little difficult to explain, but the tanker truck would fill the bulk tanks, which are outside the building. They are near the tent, but there's a filling station that they connect to that has containment, that they connect their hose, and it pumps directly to the tanks.
And this is the way you've been doing it for many years?
Yes.
Are they covered, those frac tank, bulk tanks, or are they open?
They're closed tanks. Yes. All of the tanks are closed tanks, none are open.
So literally, the only probability of a spill comes from the tanker truck loading to the tanks, and you've got a containment system for that?
That's correct. We have a containment for where they make their connections for the hoses.
Okay.
And would it be safe to say then that the existing operation is fully permitted and in compliance with the EPA and NJDEP with regard to, the environmental use of these materials?
That's correct.
And
And it's the same way, this is not a change in operations for us. This is the same way we've been doing it for many, many, many years.
And if there were to be an unpermitted spill or something like that, would the applicant would, I would assume, but correct me if I'm wrong, would the applicant contact the appropriate authorities pursuant to the Spill Act or any other legislation regarding that kind of event, in the unlikely event that it were to occur?
Yeah, absolutely.
And has anything like that ever occurred?
Nothing significant in my recollection.
Thank you.
Okay.
There should be a clarification there.
Okay, so another representative, General Electric, Mr. Colin Spellmeyer, is also available.
Colin, just,
We can have him sworn.
all right. Do you swear affirm to tell the truth for this planning board tonight?
Yes.
Okay. Colin, do me a favor, state and spell your name for the record.
Colin Spellmeyer, C-O-L-I-N. First name, last name is S-P-E-L-L-M-E-Y-E-R.
All right. Just use the microphone.
And I will. Can you hear me? Okay.
You have a clarification?
Clarification is, during the Hurricane Ida, when there was a suspected spill, we filed out of an abundance of caution, a suspected spill. So it would be worthwhile noting or clarifying that we have had a suspected spill during flooding from Ida, but not related to the filling of the process tanks, nor the operation of the facility since I could find a record.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Questions? Any other questions for these witnesses?
Mr. Chairman,
Who's speaking? Mr. Mandel, go ahead.
how many employees are at the site?
Okay. 126 employees in New Jersey, 60 employees in Pennsylvania, and
No, this site.
126.
There are 126.
Yes.
And how many parking spaces?
They go across 3 shifts.
Okay, so it's 42 a shift?
It's directionally balanced. I would say that it's more first and second shift, and third shift is a lesser amount.
So 50, 55 employees?
No, it's probably 40. It's pretty close to balance, 40-ish. And then some work remotely and et cetera. So if like our finance manager works remote,
And how many visitors do you typically get?
rarely any.
Rarely?
It's just contractors who work on the site.
No salespeople trying to sell you something?
No.
So the proposed parking would be more than adequate?
Yes.
And the engineer just reminded me, I believe there's 71 spaces remaining after the...
Well, that's why I was trying to get at how many employees there were, and some may even carpool, but...
Okay, got it, understood. I believe the other question remaining from Ms. Veely was the question about the roof over the, whether there's a
They're
roof
frac
over
tanks.
that area.
I can comment. There is not. There's not a roof over that area, and
And
there's
there's
not
not-
intended to be a roof.
No, no proposed.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions from the board, from these witnesses?
Chairman, can I ask one more?
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Veely.
I know that, the construction official was actually just texting me. There was a question about the sheds. The sheds that are proposed, the existing drum storage containment sheds for the waste drums, are they the only ones being used for the proposed and on-site? I know that that came up during plan review also. I just want to make sure that everything that you're using and you're doing, that when we go to issue the zoning and the building permits, like everything's covered. So there was a question about the sheds. Are there any other sheds besides those 3 that are being used for storage?
No.
No? Okay. So that covers everything.
Yeah, the drum storage sheds hold all the drums if they're not inside the
Okay,
production area.
okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Okay. Your case, sir.
Okay, just briefly to conclude, I don't know if we wanted to maybe open up to the public first or do that after my summation.
We'll allow that after your summation.
Okay.
All right, I'll give you another chance if you'd like.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, as Mr. Marinelli testified and the representative of General Electric, we are asking for these improvements on a temporary basis. We agreed to the stipulations made on the record. The parking and rear yard setback variances will allow the parking area to be used as a temporary location of those structures, and the pre-existing non-conforming drive-out width will remain unchanged. We're asking for a variance for the height of the tent, which will allow for the elevated pipe fee for safety purposes. So the applicant is simply seeking to perform these vital improvements to a complex industrial operation over a longer period of time than what would otherwise be permitted. We came before the board today because, as Ms. Beely noted, we were permitted 6 months to have these temporary improvements while we were undergoing construction, and the world changed because of COVID, and they ended up remaining longer than we had anticipated, and that's why we're before this board. I think our engineer provided adequate testimony to show how these improvements are not going to have any detriment on the surrounding neighborhood or to the zone plan. So I would respectfully request that the board approve this application.
Okay, let me go ahead and open it up to the general public. Are there any members of the public who would have any questions or comments for this application? Seeing none, I'll close the public portion and open up to questions or comments from the board. All right, Mr. Napolitano?
Yeah, I have one more thing, just to clarify something. Maybe we can answer it. So this plan for this tent was already approved in 2017? Is that accurate? The tent that's there now was approved in 2017?
No.
No, okay. These plans say they were, I don't know, I'm just kind of lost. Is this tent already there?
Yes.
Right, okay, and now we're looking for approval to actually utilize it and put stuff inside of it? That's where, okay. All right.
It was
Just the dates on here are messing me up. It says 2017 and then 2018 revised, so.
Right, so just so very briefly, just so the answer Mr. Napolitano's question, which for new members of the board, they weren't here with the prior application, and that's where the prior dates are from. But what Ms. Beely was indicating is that there was, this tent had gone up before this application tonight, correct?
Correct. At the first application, they did not propose a 10, not thinking that that would be required by the board. So when they came to zoning, they proposed all the items in that first approval, and they added the 10. But due to the zoning ordinance, I could only give them 6 months. So it wasn't the time that they needed. So their only choice was to come back to the board, and there's lots of times changes. So this was a perfect opportunity to extend the 10. And so building stopped them from continuing the work because they couldn't move their operations into the 10. And then, so that kind of held up the operations, so.
Okay, so Ms. Beely's jurisdiction only could extend so far, and that's why they're here tonight, basically.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board? All right, as we've had a little commentary, is there anything else you'd like to add? Okay.
Nothing further.
All right, in that case, I'll go ahead and open it up to a motion.
Mr. Chairman, on application number 21:514, Medham Corporation, 700 Parsippany Road, Block 739, Lot 2, I move that this board grant C variance relief for a temporary tent, office, electric room, chiller, and related items, subject to
The approval being for a 3-year period from the date of memorialization of the resolution, and also with the condition that applicant will interface with township employees and professionals with regard to safety and fire prevention as to traversing the area, determine what type of measures need to be implemented.
We just need to make sure there's adequate ability to access any parts that might present a danger. And further, we want to go further with, I guess it's interfacing with the township professionals about how we want them to provide some sort of indication that you're not supposed to drive in this area or whatever.
Right. I think the applicant indicated that they would review the potential of bollards, signage, fencing, to the degree of working with township professionals,
Exactly.
and particularly with the appropriate fire officials.
So moved.
Second, Mandel. Counselor, that includes the height waiver, which was not included in their application.
Right, I'm sure that Mr. Klein in his notice, and I think I did see it, it indicated any other variances, so therefore this would include the variances sought for the number of parking spaces, the variance for rear yard setback, and the continuation of the minimum aisle width along with the accessory use height.
Okay, so we have a motion and a
So
second. So we have a motion and a second. Nora, would you please call the vote?
Deitch.
Yes.
Dinsmore.
Yes.
Hernandez.
Yes.
Mandel.
Yes.
Napolitano. Sealy.
Yes.
Von Aiken.
Yes. All right, thank you very much for your time. Motion's been approved, so good luck with your project.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Corey. Or, Okay.
Jack, something different than what was submitted. The one you marked, you take it off the board and fold it, I'll take it.
All right, so that concludes our agenda for tonight, but at the last meeting, we did talk about items which we would like to recommend to our professionals for some additional review in terms of potential recommendations to the council. Did anybody have anything that they wanted to bring up at this time?
Definitively, how we calculate building height.
That's a big one.
All right, I'm sorry, Mr. Wenzel, it sounds like you had.
I was just gonna say, since the last planning board meeting, I had thought about this issue in terms of these recommendations, and probably would be best, Mr. Chair, for you to set up a subcommittee and have that subcommittee look into these issues. Obviously, anybody can bring them up at any point. You're all citizens of the fine, well, not all of you, not me, are all citizens of the fine township of Parsippany, and can bring them up to the council and mayor directly. But if you're going to do anything in a formal capacity, probably the best course of action would be by means of a subcommittee, because then that subcommittee could report it to the board, and then the board can authorize the attorney to communicate that to council.
Okay, so noted. I would like to just get a few more items on the record if there's any that people want, and then if we do move forward with the subcommittee, I will allow that to move on to the business of the next board next year, seeing as this is our final meeting of the year. So if we get a few things on the record, our professionals and other board members can hear what's of interest, and we'll wrap this meeting up. So I'm sure people want to get home, and I don't want to hold people up too much longer.
So via email to you?
No, if you have anything that you'd like to bring up at this time.
The one that he was talking about and that you talked
Yeah.
about was the most, I think.
Building height in substandard lots,
Floor area.
lots that have significant frontage questions or even side yard and backyard questions. I mean, what we don't want to create is a monstrosity. I mean, our late chairman had a problem with somebody building a building that was like all the way, the whole 35 feet allowed, but from his quarter of the lot, it looked even bigger. and it was right up against his property line practically, at least visually.
So
Blocks out the
building
sun.
height and also the envelope of the building,
Right,
Yeah.
so, and this is usually only a problem in substandard lots, or where the setbacks are inadequate in some way. So that, also the idea that we can game, an applicant can game the system by using different gable heights to average out the peak, rather than having it.
different styles of roofing can create different
When-
average heights.
When what should be done is it should be, here's the average altitude of this, height of this part of the foundation, and here's the altitude of the absolute tippy top part of it. That should be 35 feet.
You're right.
So the distance.
That's it.
Yeah.
The highest
The
point.
absolute top, not
Right.
any of that.
Right, because we had the one that came in and said, oh, our average height is 30 feet, and you look at it, and it's really 36 or 37 feet from different spots.
So it's almost as if we should limit the amount of height over the livable space. Is almost what I'm hearing.
It's just, well, it's just a total height,
Total height.
and if I could offer something else that we've talked about a little bit in the past is where that measurement starts from at the ground, whether it's pre-construction or post-construction, and what we find in many, many places, and I think Parsippany's not an outlier here, is that there's some grade manipulation, they build up the lot a little bit, and then, but it's based on the pre-construction grade, so then they're able to go even higher.
But what
So, yeah, that's a recommendation.
In that same vein, one of the things that I would want would be some sort of recognition that occasionally you can have a very steeply sloped piece of land where from one side of the building, you're talking about a 45-foot structure, and on the other, you're only talking about an 18 or 20-foot structure. I mean,
Right.
Walkout basements and
Right.
that kind of
And that-
structure.
I'm not sure what the right address to that is, if somebody's not, if there is no, if there's a decent setback from that, I'm not sure I care.
Okay.
But if there is no decent setback on that, I think it's important that the face to where the setback is, if it's inadequate, should be much more strongly limited, that kind of thing. I don't want to give Ms. Veely heartaches and heart palpitations.
Already 600 pages.
But the idea that if somebody has a home that's only 20 feet off the road, they shouldn't have 35 feet to work with. There should be some sort of downside.
I wonder if an angle of view to the top of the roof from, let's say, a 6-foot height at the road would be an appropriate way to view that.
Yeah, there are architectural standards, and I do not claim to be an architect, but I believe the sky exposure plane is what that's called, the sort of angle from what you see from the front. So we can look into that if.
Is that how other towns deal with it?
I actually have not seen that much with residential. I've seen it in business areas or downtowns, but it's certainly something that you could look
How
at.
about from the sideline too? I mean,
Well, there was one thing I mentioned last time, I think it was after we adjourned, that you might also want to look at is cantilevering. I've been noticing that more and more here, and they're doing it because they can, where the setback is measured from the foundation of the house, and they're fine, they comply, but then they jut out. They have a cantilever.
We've
by a couple
actually,
feet.
over the years, we've
It's only
had
2
that
feet, though.
that
2 feet,
question.
but if they're already kind of like right on the line, then that's just that much closer. Like we saw at the last,
Especially in
meeting
the
where there was
sides.
concern about
We
it being
tried
so
to change that
close.
with the council and
They
they
wouldn't?
denied it.
Okay.
Why would they?
knows why the council does what they do.
You could
But
throw it in the mix and see what they say, I guess.
But especially with the side, when there's potential that the side lot is already limited, and you're talking about cantilevering to the second floor, now you're talking about a fire
Same.
access issue.
Well, I think the idea that the side yard must adequately provide room for a fire department ladder to get to the roof from that sideline, even if they have a cement wall right on the property line, I think matters. I think that regardless of what kind of side yard setback you set up, if the fire department can't get to your roof, that creates a dangerous situation.
On an R4, you only have 6 feet.
Right.
So in Lake Hiawatha and Lake Parsippany, majority of them only have 6 feet.
And if you're a single floor bungalow, you know, that might be adequate,
Or
but,
pre-existing non-conforming, there's no fire truck getting around the back.
yeah.
You might have 12 feet between the two houses.
And that's the whole point, is that there's been a willingness in the past, from the discussions I've had, to accept that you can plant the ladder in the neighbor's yard to climb up onto the roof. But if you've got 2 5-foot side yards and you've got a cantilevered second floor,
And a 4 or 6 foot chain link fence between the buildings that you can't get the ladder over.
it becomes an issue.
Yeah.
And that is kind of the way we're thinking. I don't know how to properly regulate that, but I think it should be noticed.
So I think we've addressed this issue of the need to address the building envelope as well as the height of the building. I don't want to fully beat this out tonight, because I'm sure people want to get home. But I think our planner has taken some notes, and if any planners or any of the board members are interested in joining the subcommittee, I'd certainly invite that opportunity in the next year's operations of the board.
I think you just, and I'll defer to your attorney on this, so you just want to keep it under the quorum, so you don't have to notice all your meetings. You can meet, on your own time, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
So 3 or 4 members tends to be ideal.
Notice how the planner is being very sneaky.
I've served on subcommittees like this on my own board, so
Okay.
we always choose 3.
Are there any other issues that? Yes,
so
go ahead,
in the
Mr. Dave.
Same lines of the height, right? Even the lot size, when it comes to sub-lot situations, and like the last time, the width was
50 feet.
40 actually. Right?
Oh, was it?
No,
Okay.
No, it's
50.
It was 2 lots of 50.
Okay, yeah, there were 50, and they were saying there were some 40 out there in there.
There were,
But those
yes.
were old.
But they were, older ones, right? So, how do, kind of, is it good enough indicator, or do you want to play around with it, I don't know, is it a long strip, is it okay if they meet the area, I think,
Sometimes you can't put in ordinances, and you need these to come before the board, only because there's exceptions. And so what we want to do is put in place ordinances which can address the majority of the things. It gives confidence to the community as to what can be built, or new homeowners, et cetera. But you can't get everything in there. There's just too many variables to account
That's
for.
actually the nature of the Board of Adjustment. The Board of Adjustment is to face what the real world has presented us with.
Yeah, okay.
If you've only got a 4,000 square foot plot of land, we can't say you can't build it.
Yeah. Now, with that said, the zoning board is pretty consistently overrun with applications. So if there's anything we can do to help with that by having things in place that make their jobs easier, I would certainly want to do that. And so if they do manage to put together their assessment and report, that would be great.
That would be great.
Anything else?
Is there an option to have these meetings, but also live streaming for the public?
I don't believe there's live streaming. That's certainly something that would have to be taken up by the council, because I believe there's an expense involved.
There's no legal reasons you couldn't do something like that, or is there?
Mr. Attorney?
There's no legal reason why you can't have it live streamed. Yes.
Except for the ice.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, you can, I mean, I know that there's many boards that are, only in person, no stream. There's others that are, recorded and then placed on TV or on their website later. But it is a choice that's ultimately made by the council. You don't have that authority unless you, well, you don't, because you're using their facility.
Right. They'd have to invest in cameras.
Right, so it would be a council, a council choice.
Gotcha. All right. Any other thoughts? Along that lines, Nick, I would also like it if all of our documents were digitized and made available for us in that way. That's also a council decision, so.
This is better than it was.
Well, this particular packet, yes.
Yeah, really.
Well, even our minor site plan subcommittee still has a big,
Yeah.
you know, but we've seen a couple of cases now where we've had the smaller form. And that is, to my mind, wonderful. I actually like a small piece of paper to work with because I can make notes during the meeting.
You can unfold it.
Yeah, without
Yeah.
complete destruction.
I'm not a
So,
fan of getting the large blueprint that,
Yeah.
you can't, I mean, there's not the room for that.
Okay. All right. I'm going to give everybody one last chance to, have any additional comments, and then we'll wrap it up. Okay?
Happy holidays.
Oh, happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Happy
Stay
holidays.
safe. Have a cookie.
It's been my pleasure working with you on the board. I hope that it's been a good experience for everyone here. And in next year, we'll, I hope to see you all there again. Thank you for your volunteerism and your efforts here. It's been very much appreciated. All right.
Thanks.
All right, so I'll accept a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
All right. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Good meeting.
What happened to the cookies?
Is the best question.
They just disappeared?
I'm sorry.
Tom, what happened? Did you take all those cookies?